calm, cinematic, restrained. The poles do not feel like places on Earth. They feel like the edges of the map, where weather becomes a wall, distance becomes a weapon, and the planet stops pretending it was built for us. For centuries, the Arctic and Antarctica have carried a strange kind of fear, not because they are empty, but because they are too good at hiding what is there. Ice does not only preserve bodies, ships, bones, and forgotten machines. Ice preserves questions. It keeps them cold, silent, and almost untouched until the world warms enough to hear them again. This is the unsettling truth beneath polar mystery. The poles are not dead zones. They are archives. Every layer of ice is a page written by storms, volcanic ash, ancient air, extinct life, military ambition, and human obsession. When we drill into them, we are not only studying climate, we are opening locked rooms. Calm, cinematic, restrained. The Arctic begins with a more familiar terror, people disappearing into whiteness. The Franklin expedition left Britain in 1845 with 2 ships, advanced technology for its time, and the confidence of an empire. Then, it vanished into the ice. For years, search parties found fragments, graves, abandoned boats, human remains, stories from Inuit witnesses that European authorities were slow to believe. What makes Franklin frightening is not only death, it is the slow collapse of certainty. The ships were strong, the men were trained, the mission was official, yet the ice reduced all of that into scattered evidence and unanswered decisions. Why did they abandon the ships? How long did order survive? At what moment did exploration become a trap? Calm, cinematic, restrained. The poles punish human arrogance in a very specific way. They do not need monsters. They use scale. A white horizon can erase direction. A storm can remove the sky. A crevasse can sit hidden under a clean surface, waiting like a mouth that learned patience. In polar landscapes, the ground itself cannot always be trusted. Antarctica deepens the fear because it is less a continent than a sealed world. It holds mountains buried under ice, valleys that have not seen rain for millions of years, lakes trapped beneath kilometers of frozen pressure, and ecosystems that survive without sunlight. It is not empty, it is concealed. Lake Vostok is one of the most disturbing examples. Buried under more than 3 kilometers of Antarctic ice, it has been isolated for an almost unimaginable span of time. Scientists wondered what might live there, what chemistry might have evolved in the dark, and whether drilling into it could contaminate a world that had been sealed away longer than human civilization has existed. Calm, cinematic, restrained. That is the horror of subglacial lakes. They are not alien because they come from space. They are alien because they are still Earth, but Earth without us. They suggest that life can continue in conditions that feel impossible, quietly, without witnesses, under a weight that would crush almost everything we understand. Then, there is the red stain of Blood Falls, pouring from Taylor Glacier like a wound in the ice. For years, it looked supernatural, red water bleeding into a white desert. The explanation is scientific, but somehow not comforting. Iron-rich brine, sealed away from oxygen and sunlight, emerges and rusts on contact with air. A hidden microbial world turns the glacier into a visible leak from deep time. Polar mysteries often become terrifying when science explains them, because explanation does not always remove dread. Sometimes it gives dread a better shape. Blood Falls is not a ghost story. It is stranger than that. A reminder that beneath the clean white surface, chemistry and life are still working in secret. Calm, cinematic, restrained. The poles also hide history. During the Cold War, the Arctic became a chessboard of radar stations, submarines, air bases, nuclear planning, and buried infrastructure. Project Iceworm, built under Greenland's ice, imagined a network of tunnels that could hide missiles beneath the frozen sheet. The plan failed, but the abandoned remains did not disappear. They waited inside the ice. This is one of the most modern polar fears. What we buried may not stay buried. As ice melts, old military waste, fuel, chemicals, and biological material can re-enter the present. The past does not return as a lesson. It returns as contamination. There is also the darker biological question. Permafrost has preserved ancient viruses, bacteria, spores, and animal remains for thousands of years. Scientists have revived some ancient microbes in controlled conditions, and every headline about a sleeping pathogen carries the same nightmare image. Something frozen before our immune memory, waking into a world that has forgotten it. Calm, cinematic, restrained. Most of this risk is complex and often exaggerated online, but the emotional fear is powerful because it comes from a real pattern. Ice is not a grave. It is a pause button. And now the pause is being lifted. The poles hold human remains with a special cruelty. In warmer places, time destroys evidence. In polar regions, time can preserve it too well. Bodies can remain recognizable. Clothing can survive. Last positions can become messages. The dead do not vanish into history. They wait, almost present, as if the cold refused to finish the sentence. That is why polar exploration stories feel haunted, even when there is no supernatural element. Scott's party dying on the return from the South Pole. Shackleton's endurance crushed by ice. Lone stations swallowed by storms. These stories are not only adventure history, they are rituals of exposure, where civilization shrinks to a tent, a lamp, a diary, and a few inches of fabric between life and the absolute outside. Calm, cinematic, restrained. But the most frightening polar mysteries may be the ones we cannot easily see. Beneath Antarctica, radar reveals landscapes hidden under the ice. Rivers, basins, ridges, possible ancient coastlines, and mountain ranges, larger than expected. It is a world mapped by echoes. We know it through signals, bouncing back from darkness. That creates a strange kind of imagination. When a landscape is hidden, the mind completes it. Hollow Earth myths, secret bases, lost civilizations, alien structures. These stories grow because the poles offer the perfect canvas. Remote, forbidden, hard to film, hard to visit, easy to misunderstand. The less accessible a place becomes, the more the imagination colonizes it. Calm, cinematic, restrained. Conspiracy theories attach themselves to Antarctica because the continent feels like a secret even when it is not. The Antarctic Treaty, research stations, restricted logistics, military history, satellite images, and endless white space all combine into one seductive idea. Maybe something is being hidden. The truth is usually more ordinary and more unsettling. What is hidden is not one grand secret. It is too much reality. There are meteorites preserved on the ice. There are ancient air bubbles that record atmospheres older than nations. There are fossils proving Antarctica was once warmer and greener. There are trapped ecosystems under glaciers. There are human mistakes sealed into snow. There are climate warnings written in layers no empire can negotiate with. Slow, ominous, quiet ending. The poles terrify us because they reveal that Earth has memory without mercy. It remembers forests where there is now ice. It remembers carbon before cities. It remembers extinctions, eruptions, migrations, impacts, and failures. We think of mystery as something hidden from knowledge, but sometimes mystery is knowledge that arrives too late. And now the poles are changing. The archive is opening faster than we can read it. Ice shelves crack, permafrost slumps, coastlines shift, ancient material surfaces. Old maps become wrong, new routes appear. Nations look north and south with fresh hunger. The end of the world is becoming accessible, and that may be the most frightening part. Because the question is no longer only what is hidden beneath the poles. The question is what happens when the hiding ends. Maybe the poles were never empty. Maybe they were holding things back. And maybe, for the first time in human history, the lock is starting to melt.